This morning, I had the talk with my 10-year-old girl. Yes, the talk. Way sooner than I wanted to, but I want to tell you about that experience and what I learned from it. I also want to hear from you. But before I go any further, if you would, go ahead and like and subscribe to this video so you can receive more videos. Also, share this with other folks that you know that might be interested. But let's get into this. The talk that every parent dreads. You don't want to have this conversation. Yeah, I had this conversation. So, my 10-year-old daughter and I, we sometimes will work out together in the mornings, and she'll wake up early along with me, and we'll run or work out. Today, she wanted to do the circuit training that we kind of do. And so, we're in the middle of doing round 6 when she drops this bomb of something that she remembered some of her classmates talking about, and she was wanting some terms clarified. She didn't understand these things. And so all of a sudden, I couldn't deal with this topic without actually explaining to her the full topic about the birds and the bees. I couldn't really address it without going to the full thing. And she's already hearing some things. She doesn't understand them. And so I sat, talked with her, tried to get all the information, and then I realized I can't go any further. I've got to have the talk. So I go wake my wife up. It's 5:30 in the morning. Yes, I get up that early. My wife does not. She was not thrilled, but I said, babe, we have a parenting moment. I need your input. And we both agreed that I would go and I was going to take her to breakfast and I would have this conversation with her. But in a couple years, when we have the other girl talk, that was her job. So we made that agreement. We figured that out. So I took my daughter to Panera. We got her, a wrap, and she wanted a croissant. And then I got some oatmeal. And I'm sitting there taking this time, praying through, and she's talking about everything under the sun. And I'm praying through, as nervous as I could be, sweating bullets, like, God, I need words right now. What do I say? What do I not say? I don't want to give her the wrong perspective. I also don't want to scar her for life. What do I do? So before I go and explain our conversation, I want to read you this. It is Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. See, this is an important verse that reminds us that part of God's plan for families is to be the learning center for development. Like families, there's two organizations that will last forever, families and the church. And so both places are meant to be places of learning and growth, but especially the family is foundational, and it's our job as parents to raise up our kids in the way that they should go so that when they're older, they don't go sideways. They don't go in the wrong direction. It is our role to help them see things correctly. And so I know that sometimes it can be hard, it can be challenging, but if we don't teach our kids the right things, somebody else will. Our world is full of people trying to hijack our kids' minds and to get them to think the way that they want them to think. And so as parents, it's our job to carry that out. And so I wanted to make sure that even though this is earlier than I wanted to have this conversation, I knew that if I did not have this conversation at this moment, she was going to learn it from somebody else. And I did not want that to happen. And so we jumped right in. I changed the plans of my early morning, and we went and got some food and talked. So as I was eating my oatmeal, I had an idea. I had an idea of how I can start this thing. I had no idea how I was going to finish it, but I knew how I was going to start it. So I began just by asking her questions. And I asked her this one question. I said, hey, what are some differences that you know between boys and girls? And she just started naming the things that she thought were different. None of them were the big differences. There were things like, she heard in school that boys tend to have more muscles and that girls have babies and boys don't. And she gave all these other different examples, like typically girls have higher pitched voices, boys have lower pitched voices, all these different things. And so I had to fish a little bit. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And I said, well, so you have two brothers, and what are some differences? And they said, well, my brothers are annoying. I go, well, maybe that's a little bit of a difference, but what are some other differences? And then I'm like, you see them running around before they go to bed. What are they doing? And they're like, ooh, sometimes, because my sons are 5 and 3 years old. She goes, sometimes they shake their booty. And she goes, oh, when they go potty, they like to use their fire hose. And that's her explanation. I'm like, oh, so they're different, right? And she's like, well, yes, they're different. And I go, what is another thing that is, as women grow up, that changes? And she gave all different reasons, like, something about freckles and something about belly buttons changing, like all sorts of different things. Not quite sure where she picked all that stuff up. But then, and this is just her being as innocent could be, she goes, oh, and they got boobies. And so, like, I'm sitting in my chair about to die, but I want to be completely serious as she's being sincere to me. And I'm like, and what do those do? And she goes, they actually, it's for the baby so the baby can eat. And I go, isn't that cool that God created a way that babies could actually eat? Because they don't have teeth, they can't chew things. And yet God, in his design, had a plan for that, even for little babies. And so I wanted her to understand this important point. And whenever you have this conversation, this is fundamental, is that God had a plan. He had a plan for how he did everything, even in his design for children, babies, to be able to nurse. And so I wanted her to understand that this was God's idea. It was his plan. So then, right after that, she pivots. And she asked the question that helped create the foot into this conversation. I wanted to go a little bit deeper. And so she goes, so, Daddy, how do babies get in mommy's belly? And I said, ooh, that's a good question. And now Daddy's going to talk to you about something that's really important. So I want you to listen, and I want you to ask any questions that you may have. You can talk to Daddy or Mommy about anything, no matter, it's not embarrassing. If you want the truth, you can come to us, and we'll do our best to answer. So what I said next was, I said, remember how you said that only girls can have babies? And she goes, yes. Did you know, I said, that it actually takes a daddy and a mommy to have a baby? And she goes, really? And I said, really? And then I started to kind of figure my way out. At that time, I'm trying to decide, how do I explain this in a way that she understands? If you know me, I would rather have a full-out plan knowing how exactly what I'm going to say. I did not have this. So I was feeling my way through it. And I said, so there's DNA. And DNA is what we're built out of. You know how like bricks build walls, right? And build a building. Well, we have those things. It's called DNA. And some of your DNA, some of your bricks or your building blocks comes from your mommy, and some of them come from your daddy. And so mommies have what they call eggs. And I saw it in her face. The moment I said that, I go, oh, I got to explain this. And I'm like, sweetheart, they're not like chicken eggs. It's not like that. And she's like, oh. I knew she was going there. And I'm like, no, they're different. They're there. They're not like chicken eggs. They're soft. They're very, very small. You don't even know that they're there. And then I explained to her that the eggs are inside. Just want to pause. At this moment, I'm like praying, like, Lord, please help me say the right thing. Like, am I remembering everything? Like, I know I've been married a while. I know how it all works. But as far as explaining the details, help me get the details right. And then I said, and boys have seeds. At this point, I'm committed to explaining something, but I'm also fighting with myself. Do I go this far with it? But I did not want her to get misinformation or to get confused, because my daughter is very smart and will figure things out. And so I said, so the eggs for the girls on the inside, but with boys, you know how they have a fire hose? And she goes, yes. I go, do you know where the seeds are? She goes, no. So I go, you know how the boys have a fire hose? And she goes, yes. Well, the seeds, remember that round part underneath the hose? That's where the seeds are for boys. And she immediately goes, do not tell my brothers that. Do not tell them. Because if they find out they have seeds, they will do disgusting things. That's what she said. She said it just like that. Her hands were on the table. She goes, they will do disgusting things. And I go, sweetheart, you are so right. That's why what I'm telling you, you don't tell your sister, you don't tell your brothers, you don't tell your friends at school. You let their mommies and daddies do it, or you let mommy and daddy do that for your brothers and sisters. And she's like, oh, I'm not telling them, because I'm not. She's like, I'm not having that conversation. So I go, so it takes the seed and the egg for a person to actually become a person. So again, I'm taking it step by step. I know there's a ledge out there somewhere. I'm just not sure how far I'm going to get before I fall off the edge. And then she goes, oh, so is that when the kissing happens and then the kissing, because she thought that the kissing makes the baby. And so she goes, so is that why the kissing makes the baby or something along those lines? And I go, well, kissing's a part of it, but there's more to it than that. And at this point, this is where you have to decide if your kid's ready for this, if they're in the right age or not. But I knew her in the situation that she was talking about before. I felt it was very important that I had to explain that God had a plan and a design and in regards to relationships and babies and sex in general. So I felt like I needed to go there and explain it. So I explained the way actually it happens, the way the seed and the egg happens, is that for the daddy, the hose, and girls, what do they have? And she said, she calls it her front or what have you. And I said, yes, the hose and the front connect, and the seed goes in to the egg. And she goes, so a mommy and daddy's front kiss? And she did a hand gesture to describe, like she knew what I was talking about, but her terminology was that the fronts kiss. And I said, yes, basically. And she goes, oh, gross. Oh. I actually took pictures. So like as I'm going through this, I'm going to show you these pictures where you can tell like it's before the conversation. You can tell like she has this inquisitive. You can have this moment where she's like what? And then there's the part where she's like, oh, like that. And so actually, that's actually a good response if you're a parent that they say that. And so, and she's like, why would people do that? And I go, it is gross. At your age, it's gross. But when you get older, it's important to understand that God made this to be beautiful, but it's beautiful between a mommy and a daddy, and because they create a family. And then she's like, so wait. So you go to the hospital, the doctor tells you what to do, and I'm like, no. That's not how this thing plays out. This is something that mommies and daddies do on their own. It's a way that they show love. Just like how mommies and daddies kiss, this is one way that they show love. And she's like, how does that show love? She's like really not getting it. She understands it, but she's not getting it. And then for clarity's sake, because my daughter asked a lot of questions. She asked a lot of good questions. Many of them I can't even remember. But she showed me the hand gesture, which she had never seen before. It was in her brain before. But, the hand gesture to illustrate it, I don't need to do that here. And she's like, so it's like this? And I go, yeah, it's kind of like that. And she's like, and then she sat there and she calmed down a little bit. And she goes, okay, so then there's a baby growing now in mommy. And how long? And I said, well, it's about 9 months most of the time. And then she's like, well, how does the baby get out? And of course, this is a common thing. She goes, does the baby come out of the butt? And I go, no, that's not how it works. Although some people think that. In fact, my cousin at age 22 still thought that. But no, that's not how it works. She goes, well, then where does the baby come out from? And I lean in and I say, sweetheart, the baby comes out of the front. And immediately, there's no pause, there's no delay, there's no whatever. Immediately when I said that, she goes, I'm never getting married. And I bust out laughing at that point because I'm like, thank God. You don't have to get married. You can stay with mommy and daddy forever. And I did not say that. But I was laughing because her response, she was like, what? And she goes, does it hurt? And I go, from most of the mommies I know of, they've said it hurts. And she's like, why would anybody do this? And she goes, is it messy? Do you have to take a shower? I'm like, yes, it's pretty messy. She's like, so why do it? And I go, sweetheart, that's really one of the most important things in all of this. The whole kissing and all that, you only do that if you really love each other, because as a mommy and daddy that if you do this and you have a child, it's going to be messy and sometimes it hurts. But this is how we show love. We love each other. And now we have children. Like, for example, you're here, right? And your sister and your two brothers are here. Now we get to love you and you get to love us. See, sometimes the things that we love the most can sometimes be messy and can sometimes, you know, um, can cause us pain. But that's exactly why Jesus came and died for us. He loved us, and it was painful and it was messy, but without him, we would have no hope. But because he loved us, he did that. And that's why it's really important that you understand that when a mommy and daddy, you take it very seriously who you marry, and you take it very seriously when you decide to have children because sometimes it hurts and it's messy. And she's like, okay, all right. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Like, but this is good. Like, I'm glad I know this, but I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm like, all right. So we start talking about, we take our stuff, at Panera, you go put your plates away. And we're going to walk out, but we still had time because her school wasn't ready to have people in. So we just walked. There's a strip mall there. So we just walked around, held her hand, and then we were talking about something else. And then out of the blue, she goes, Daddy, how do I know if someone's going to be a good daddy and a good husband? Like, what do I look for? And she's 10. But she has already identified the consequences. She's identified the importance of what we talked about, and she's translating it to, like, well, how do I make these decisions? I said, sweetheart, that's a really good question. Well, there's some things you can look for. Number one, do they love Jesus? If they don't love Jesus, then you don't even think about it. And another thing is, are they plugged into a local church? Because lots of people can say they love Jesus, but it doesn't mean that they really actually do. Sometimes guys will tell you stuff just because they want to be with you, not because they're actually telling the truth. And another thing is how do they treat people that can't benefit from? Meaning, if they can't get something from somebody, are they still nice to them? Are they kind? Or how do they treat leaders? Because if they don't respect their parents and your parents and teachers and their boss and their pastors, if they don't show respect to leaders, they won't show respect to you. And another thing that you need to consider is, what do your friends and family think about this person? Sometimes people make decisions just by themselves, and it causes lots of problems. I said, sweetheart, you can always talk to mommy or daddy about what you're thinking or ask questions, because it's a really tough decision. And nobody should make that decision just by themselves. In fact, most of the time when people make that decision just by themselves, by how I feel, they end up regretting it. I also said another thing you can tell is, do they work hard? Do they work hard in their school? Do they work hard with their job? Because if they don't work hard, guess what? You're going to have to do everything on your own. You don't want to marry a bum who won't work, who won't do something. And then I began to tell her about our story, about her mommy and daddy. And this is a time where you can tell about what you did wrong and what you would like to do differently. If you didn't do all the right things, this is also where you can highlight what you did well. And I said, well, I met your mommy in a play, and then she started coming to my church. And all of a sudden, we were in a small group together, and we got to know each other, and all of our friends got to know each other too. And then our parents got to know each other. See, by the time that all happened, we all had a pretty good idea of who we were. So nobody was hiding anything. It wasn't scary. And then there was enough time to be able to tell that we were a good match and that we had the same values, or we had the same heart. And that's one of the ways that we knew. See, this isn't something you want to do just on your own. And she goes, oh, no, I get that. And I go, that's why it's really important that you just don't give your heart away to any boy that you see. And she's like, no, I think I got that. I got a couple crushes here and there, but I'm not giving my heart away because, I don't remember exactly what she said, but she said something along the lines of, I'm not going to give my heart away because, like, if I do that, like, I know it's going to be painful and messy, and I don't want to do that unless I know it's a good thing. So we just finished our walk. We got in our car. We laughed about a few things. And when I dropped her off at school, she gave me a kiss. And it was just a really good time. I did not want to have that conversation at that time. But because of the things that she was hearing and experiencing at school, I had to take the time to give groundwork of how things work. In fact, one of the last things I said to her is, like, see, you know how boys and girls are. God had a plan. Even with the feeding of the baby, God has a plan. God has made you a certain way. God made mommy and daddies a certain way. And this is something important, that God has a plan throughout the rest of your life. He has a plan for who you're going to marry. He has a plan for your job. And if you guys have family, there's a plan. We can trust God. I did not plan to have that conversation at that point. I was trying to buy time for a little bit longer. But because of the situations with what she was hearing at school and what she was experiencing, I felt like I had to get in front of this because I wanted her to understand this from me and not just some kid at school who doesn't know what they're talking about. And also what it did is I respected her conversation. I respected it, and then we had this bonding time. So the next time, she's more likely to come to me to talk to me about other things. But that conversation never would have happened had I not been already spending time with my daughter. So we work out consistently, and sometimes she'll ask me questions. Like yesterday morning, when we're running early in the morning, she's asking me about stuff like, where should we go on vacation, or something about her math class, or something along those lines. It just so happens I was in round 6, totally not ready for the conversation, that all of a sudden she just dropped the bomb. But I had to spend time with her. And I just want to encourage you as a parent, spend time with them. Don't worry if they don't tell you all the big things. Talk about things that don't matter, because when they talk to you about things that don't matter, it matters to them. And then later on, they'll ask you things that are more important. Now, one of the things I want to highlight here is every kid is different. Likely, I would have handled this differently from one daughter to the next daughter, or even my boys, because each of my children are very different. So you have to take into account how each of your kids are different. You also have to figure out how they process things. I don't know that I would have gone as into many details with my other kids, but I know my daughter. She's smart. She figures things out. More questions were going to come up. Where some of the other ones, you might be able to take one step and say, this is what it looks like, and then take the next step, and also there's this. So you have to figure that out with your own kids. You also have to figure out what's going on with your school, what's going on with your kids' friends, what's going on with friends at church, what's going on. Because I guarantee you, they're talking about certain things. Are you prepared? Are you being intentional? Again, it's our job to raise up the kids. The family is built to help develop people to honor God. That's what we're meant to do. And anything that tries to demean the family, anything that tries to dispel the family or harm the family is of the enemy and not of the Lord, because the Lord made the family to help nurture. There's a reason why families that where you have a mommy and a daddy in a family together, why the statistics for them are so much better on every level. Grades, premarital sex is down, children out of wedlock is down, depression is down, success in school is way up, success long-term in their lives are up. It's our job. If you're a parent, you know what? You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Sometimes you even have to apologize to your kids when you make mistakes. But you're still a parent. Don't make the mistakes keep you from actually leading them. One of the things I also wanted to highlight with my daughter is that there are certain terms. And so one of the things I said is this act, just like you were saying, kissing is a phrase. And what she liked to call kissing with your fronts, I said, that's actually what we call sex. And she goes, I've heard that word before. I go, so that's what it is. And it was made to happen within a husband and wife in marriage. So I tried to answer and address certain phrases. She didn't even have certain words for things, so I had to give her, like, this is what that word is, and that's what it means. And she was like, oh. What that does is when they hear other people talking about stuff, they don't have to sit there and go, ooh, I wonder. They already know, they know the truth. So I tried to answer some of the questions, and I tried to use the right terms, because sometimes a parent doesn't want to use the terms, and if a kid does not know how to communicate things, they may be saying one thing and not realizing that means something else. Or if someone was getting hurt or abused or mistreated, they're not using the right terms, so people might not understand. For example, if somebody says, oh, they hit my booty, and it's really not the booty, it's something different, well, that's a different conversation. And so I felt it was important, especially at this time, to explain the terms to her so she knew what they were. Anyways, I just want to highlight this, is that I wasn't planning on having this conversation. But at the end of it, I felt like the Lord used it to help give her better understanding. And I'll just be honest with you. I'm so glad it's over with. I wanted to record it and then just like give it to the rest of my kids. Like, hey, kids, watch this video. We're not going to do that. With each of the kids, we'll do something different. But again, I just want to share with you my experience. Maybe some of it helped you. Maybe you just found it amusing. If you have any other questions, please leave a comment down below. Like, subscribe. Share with your friends. But again, also share with me how you guys have told your kids about these sort of things. I want to end with prayer. Lord, I pray for wisdom with parents. One is I pray that you'd help all the parents to know the truth about what your word says, and that you would give them wisdom how to communicate it. I pray for wisdom on how to discuss these things with their children at the right time, at the right age, with the right amount of information, and give them wisdom how to actually deal with the lies and the deceptions and the messages of the world. In Jesus' name, amen.